What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Cafe and Views. Today we went to Nespresso and we got ourselves the honey cinnamon latte. Let's talk about the actual shop. It's on a really busy street in Beverly Hills. It's like right next to Rodeo, so you can't miss it. And just being outside of it, it looks really upscale. It looks modern. It looks like a coffee shop that tries to appeal to the present and the future audience, as opposed to a traditional coffee shop like Starbucks or Dunkin that kind of appeals to the crowd nowadays and in the past. But when you walk in, the menu is not that extensive, but they do sell a lot of different coffees and espressos and machines that you can buy along with the coffee. So it's not just a coffee shop, but it's also a place where you can get your coffee makers to brew the coffees that you would order to go. So it kind of looks more like a coffee shop that wants to sell you equipment more so than a coffee shop that actually wants to sell you coffee. To me, it seems like it's more of a powerhouse coffee shop like Starbucks or Dunkin. It's not a coffee shop that sells you food either. For me, it's kind of a depressing coffee shop that's not really memorable. If you're in that exact area or if you're on that street and you need coffee, you're probably gonna go to Nespresso, but it's not gonna be your first option when you're in Beverly Hills. Let's talk about acidity. Immediately, this coffee gives off a sour-ish vibe. It doesn't give off a sweet vibe like you might think of the honey and the cinnamon. The espresso in this coffee is really strong, and that's the main ingredient that I'm really getting in this coffee. That's what's being more pronounced, and because of that, the sourness from the espresso is peeking out and is covering up the honey and the cinnamon that went into it. I can't really get any almond milk from it either. The espresso is being so potent that it's covering up the majority of the scents and the flavors in it. To me, this coffee is not as bright. If I had to gauge it, I would say it's kind of dark just because of the prominent espresso. If you're able to taste more milk from it, then it would be more on the light side. If you tasted more fruity notes and more sweet notes, it would be more on the brightness side. But this coffee is pretty sharp. It is packing a punch. If you need something in the morning to really get you going and you like the taste of dark coffees and espresso and not too much flavor that goes on, this coffee is gonna be perfect for you. It's definitely gonna wake you up because of the espresso, because of the prominency of the strong espresso taste. For acidity, I'm gonna put this at about a 2 out of 5. Next up is gonna be aroma. Because the cinnamon is on top and the honey is mixed into the espresso, you're getting more honey and cinnamon off the smell, off the aroma, than you are espresso. I'm not getting too much of the espresso smell. It's mostly in the flavor. It's not peeking out in the aroma at all. Top ingredient that I'm smelling is cinnamon, followed by honey, and then the almond milk, and then finally the espresso. But the cinnamon is real prominent. It is giving off that nice holiday and winter vibe. It's September now, almost October, and it's giving off that fall Halloween type of vibe because of the cinnamon. Kind of smells a little bit like a gingerbread cookie. Not as prominent, but it's still giving off that subtle hint of that cookie. The aroma is pretty strong. The more you put your nose into the coffee, the stronger cinnamon that you're gonna get, but it is an extremely pleasant smell. It is gonna brighten up your mood in a big way. It's definitely gonna put you in that kind of mentality, and it's gonna put you in that fall time type of mood. This coffee is definitely not a summer and a spring coffee. It's more so for the fall and the winter. And the aroma is kind of mouth-watering just because of that cookie sensation. It makes you wanna go and grab a cinnamon cookie. All in all, for aroma, I'm gonna put this at a 4 out of 5. Next up is gonna be flavor. So like with the acidity, the cinnamon is mixing with the espresso and kind of altering the espresso taste ever so slightly, but the espresso is still more pronounced. It is still the powerhouse and the top dog in this coffee. You're not gonna get a cinnamon taste like you are in the aroma, so it kind of flip-flops in a way where for the flavor, the espresso is on top followed by the milk, and then the honey, and then the cinnamon. So for like with the Aroma, it was cinnamon, honey, almond milk, and then espresso. But the flavor in the coffee is definitely gonna wake you up. It's definitely a pleasant flavor. It's not super sour to the point where it's lip puckering and you only want a shot of this coffee. So for the flavor, it's good enough to be able to drink as a coffee as opposed to a shot. If this coffee was just espresso, you might not want to drink it as a coffee, but because of the ingredients together, providing that altering espresso taste, it provides it with a nice flavor that you can drink at the fall and the winter time. Because the flavor is predominantly espresso and not too much of the other flavors, I'm gonna put flavor at about a 2.5 out of 5. Next up is gonna be body. So I'm gonna put this coffee more on the soda side. It's maybe a notch or two right above the middle point of soda. It's not frothy and it's not milkshake-like, but it is providing a little bit of that airiness to it. And it does provide a coating in your mouth. It's not super heavy, but it is providing somewhat of a weight to it. It does feel like it's a little bit heavy on your tongue. All the ingredients and the water and the ice tone down the syrupiness of the espresso. If you just had the espresso flavoring and the taste, it would be more syrupy, but everything else combining took away from that syrupiness and provided more of a soda consistency. It's not providing any sort of texture to it. When it's on your tongue, it's not really filling in your taste buds and kind of changing your perception of this coffee. It sticks around for maybe 4 or 5 seconds and then dissipates and goes away as if you never had a coffee in your mouth at all. But the cinnamon in this coffee does stick around. That's the only ingredient that really stays and kind of plays with your mind as soon as the coffee is over, because cinnamon is a spice, and because it's nice and because it's almost fall and autumn, the cinnamon spice is gonna play with your head and kind of stay and linger a little bit longer than the other flavors that you might forget about. Honey and espresso and milk is not really a fall or winter type of scent or flavor, but the cinnamon is. And the spice kind of attracts to the roof of your mouth and just overall on your tongue and sticks around. So as you're tasting your saliva, you're still getting a little bit of that cinnamon taste to it. For body, I'm gonna put this at about a 3 out of 5. Next up is gonna be sweetness. So the cinnamon and the honey don't provide the coffee with enough sweetness to get me to that sweet spot that I like. When I mentioned in the beginning, the espresso was more prominent, so it became more sour than anything else, and that's all that I'm really getting in this coffee. It's a sour coffee, but with cinnamon notes to it. That's kind of the only thing that I could really compare it to. But as you keep drinking the coffee, it's getting a little bit sweeter, and then the only sweetness that I'm getting from this coffee is that honey, molasses, sugary type of flavoring. Not strong like the actual sugar, but it is providing that sweeter honey type of flavor. For sweetness, I'm gonna put this coffee at about a 2 out of 5. Next up is gonna be aftertaste. So like with body, you're getting that cinnamon flavoring, cinnamon taste as soon as you swallow the coffee. It does glide down your throat in a smooth fashion. Even with the cinnamon being in the coffee, the cinnamon is sticking around and kind of coating your throat and your mouth and your tongue, but it doesn't give that sand type of texture and consistency. It's blending with the coffee real well, and only the cinnamon taste is sticking around. The actual cinnamon spice is not sticking around at all. You don't get really anything at all. And a couple seconds after you finish drinking the coffee, when it's down your throat, it's still the same flavor and it's still the same overall experience that you got when the coffee was still in your mouth. Nothing changes. The flavors don't alter when it's already down your throat. You're still getting that same aftertaste and overall feeling. And coffee is both dry and wet. When it's in your mouth, it's providing a coating and it's providing a wet feeling. But as soon as you finish drinking the coffee and it's down your throat, your mouth kind of dries out, and then coffee dissipates pretty quickly, and and that's what causes your mouth to be dry. The cinnamon is playing a huge factor in causing your mouth to become dry. The espresso is always doing the same thing. So you're gonna have more of a dry mouth 10 to 15 seconds after you finish drinking the coffee. So you gotta make sure to be prepared for that. Because the cinnamon sticks around, I'm gonna put Aftertaste at about a 3.5 out of 5. Next up is gonna be complexity. For being mixed with honey and cinnamon and almond milk and espresso, I would put this coffee in the middle to lower point in terms of complexity. The color of the coffee was the same. It was just that typical brown coffee color. They did a decent job at branding the cup. Obviously, that's a big factor that I like, is when the coffee cups are different and they're branded to make it look like their own, and it's not just a coffee cup that they bought from the store to use. But the cinnamon on top did provide that slight complexity factor where it just changed the coffee from a simple espresso latte into a honey, cinnamon, and different kind of look. And obviously with the cinnamon, it puts you in that fall mood. So again, the complexity is changed as well. A lot of coffees that just have espresso, honey, and ingredients like that, you could drink them more so in the summer and spring. But this coffee, because it has cinnamon, because the cinnamon is more prominent in the aroma and the aftertaste, and you drink this in the fall and the winter, but the coffee shop does take points off for complexity because it's just like a Walmart or a powerhouse type of coffee shop, and it's not really as welcoming as a mom and pop type of store would. There's not many layers that really go into the coffee. It's not like a book that you're reading and you're getting different kind of chapters. It's just all pretty much streamlined. It's like a Spark Notes version of a coffee. It's just from start to finish, the simple, smooth coffee, no highs and lows, just straight all throughout. But it does kind of change flavors a little bit. If you think about it enough, you are getting some cinnamon, and then it's going back to espresso, and then you get a little bit of a honey, and then it goes back to espresso again. So it alternates from those ingredients all throughout. But the change is not extreme, it's just subtle and slight. So it does provide a nice experience, changing flavors all throughout the coffee, and then you're also getting different kind of experiences. As soon as you finish drinking the coffee and you get that aftertaste, it changes as well in that category. For aftertaste, I'm gonna put this at about a 3 out of 5. Next up is gonna be balance. This coffee is really balanced from what it is and how it makes you think that you're in the fall and winter because of the cinnamon, and everything else is getting balanced, and the espresso is not too prominent, that subtle espresso coffee that you would get. It does a really good job at doing that. The cinnamon in the coffee, it doesn't affect your throat at all. The spice doesn't stick around. Start to finish, this coffee is balanced and it doesn't change too much. The layers don't change, the complexity, the overall feel of the coffee doesn't change. It all stays the same all throughout. So for a simple coffee, that's a really good thing. For a complex coffee, if this coffee had 5, 6, 7 ingredients and it was perfectly balanced, it might not be as good. Balance, I'm gonna put this at a 4 out of 5. Next up is gonna be forgiveness. So the aspects of this coffee are gonna be forgiven, like the coffee shop look and the outside and everything about the coffee shop. How it's a powerhouse is gonna be forgiven because of the cinnamon, because it's one of the few coffees that are bringing me to that fall and winter type of vibe. It's one of my favorite seasons of the year, and because this coffee is doing a real good job at bringing me back and making me think back to Pennsylvania and how it's colder there and how the seasons change and the leaves change colors. It's doing a real good job. So because of that, I'm gonna forgive the other aspects that it lacks, like the complexity and other factors like flavor and things like that are gonna get forgiven because of what the coffee is doing in terms of memory. For forgiveness, I'm gonna put this at about a 3.5 out of 5. Lastly, we're gonna be talking about versatility. I could say that you could drink this coffee during the summer and the winter. It wouldn't be as right as drinking this coffee in the fall and in the winter. You would kind of want to save those memories and experiences and the flavors and aromas for those type of months when it starts getting cooler out. Start wearing longer sleeves or hoodies or jackets, and you're drinking this coffee when there's a slight breeze out. It's gonna enhance that type of mood and the experience a whole lot more than if you were to drink this coffee in the summer days when it's 90 degrees out. Even with the ice, it just wouldn't fit as well as the later months. For versatility, I'm gonna put this at about a 2.5 out of 5. All in all, the honey cinnamon latte from Nespresso got a 30 out of 50 or a 60% out of 100. Thank you so much for watching Cafe and Views, where we went to Nespresso and we got their honey cinnamon latte. Make sure you tune in next episode, where it's going to be the start of season 4 and where we're going to Studio City to try out their 9 best coffee shops. Stay tuned for more. Peace.